Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. I never thought my marriage would end with a text message. Yet there it was. A simple, heartless string of words flashing on my screen, reducing 7 years of love, sacrifice, and loyalty to nothing more than a casual breakup notice. Mia, it's over. I'm moving on. Don't try to contact me. The money is gone. At first, my brain refused to process what I was reading. I blinked, my fingers trembling as I scrolled back up, rereading the message, hoping I had misunderstood. But no. The meaning was painfully clear. He had taken everything. The savings we had built together. The emergency fund I thought we were protecting for our future. Every single cent wiped clean in an instant. Stolen by the very man who once swore to protect me. And for what? A new life. A new woman. Something inside me snapped. I tried calling him, my heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. But the call went straight to voicemail. Called again. And again. Nothing. I stared at my phone, my mind spiraling between heartbreak and sheer, unfiltered rage. My husband, Daniel Carter, the man I had loved, trusted, and sacrificed for, hadn't just left me. He had robbed me blind, vanished without a trace, and left me with nothing but a text message. The worst part, I never saw it coming. The following days were a blur of betrayal, tears, and crushing financial panic. I sat on the living room floor surrounded by unpaid bills, financial statements that didn't add up, and the harsh reality that I had been played for a fool. The house. It was in my name, but the mortgage payments were months behind. The credit cards. Maxed out. All thanks to Daniel's secret withdrawals. The joint account. Completely emptied. Had nothing. And the worst part. I had no idea where he had gone. No explanations. No closure. Just the bitter taste of betrayal. Then one morning, just as I was beginning to lose hope, I received a new message. A number I didn't recognize. Mr. Jonathan Carter's reading will take place this Friday at 2 p.m. Attendance is required for all direct family members. My breath caught in my throat. Jonathan Carter. Daniel's father. I had known he was sick, but the news of his death hit me harder than expected. Despite being a no-nonsense, cutthroat businessman, Jonathan had always treated me with respect. Even when his relationship with Daniel was strained, he never looked down on me. And now he was gone. But then a thought hit me. Daniel would be there. The lying, thieving, cowardly husband who disappeared without a word would have to show his face at this reading. Jonathan Carter was a meticulous man when it came to his will. There was money involved, a lot of it, and if there was one thing I knew about Daniel, he would be expecting a fortune. I wasn't just going to show up. I was going to make sure he regretted every single thing he did to me. Friday arrived faster than I anticipated. As I stood in front of the massive iron gates of the Carter estate, a surge of nervous energy coursed through me. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and walked inside. The mansion was as grand and imposing as ever. A place built on old money, power, and generations of wealth. Inside, family members, distant relatives, and legal advisors filled the room, all dressed in somber tones. But then I saw him. Daniel. He was sitting near the front, looking every bit the entitled, arrogant man I had spent too many years loving. And beside him, woman. Younger. Prettier, dressed in luxury brands from head to toe. His new girlfriend. My stomach twisted, but I forced my face into a calm, unreadable mask. The moment Daniel's gaze landed on me, his entire body went rigid. I could see the panic flash in his eyes, the way his jaw tightened. But I walked straight past him and took a seat directly across from him, making sure he knew I wasn't afraid. I wasn't the woman he left behind, crying over his betrayal.
Well,
I was the storm he never saw coming. A hush fell over the room as Mr. Langston, the family lawyer, stepped forward and cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "As you know, Mr. Jonathan Carter was a man of great integrity. He was very particular about his final wishes, and I will be executing them exactly as instructed." I didn't take my eyes off Daniel. I watched as he leaned forward, his fingers tapping against the table in impatient anticipation. I could practically see the calculations running through his head. How much would he get? What luxury lifestyle could he afford? How soon could he access the money? The lawyer continued, reading off small bequests to distant relatives, sentimental items left to old friends. Then, finally, we reached the moment that mattered. "And now, the remaining assets, including the estate, company shares and personal investments, will be transferred to the designated beneficiary, as per Mr. Carter's final wishes." The entire room held its breath. Daniel was practically vibrating in his seat. Then, Mr. Langston looked directly at me. "The sole beneficiary of Jonathan Carter's estate is—" I saw Daniel's smug expression, the way his lips started to curve into a victorious smile, until the lawyer spoke my name. "Mia Carter." A stunned silence filled the room. Then Daniel choked on air. His eyes bulged, his face drained of color. "Excuse me," he spluttered. "That's not possible." His new girlfriend turned to him in horror, her manicured nails digging into his arm. I said nothing. I just sat there watching him crumble. Because Jonathan Carter had left his entire fortune to me, not his own son. And that was just the beginning. Daniel's face twisted in disbelief, his lips parting, but no words came out. He looked at the lawyer, then at me, then back at the lawyer, as if he had misheard, as if the world had suddenly turned upside down. His fingers clenched into fists on the table, his knuckles white with pressure. The room was silent, except for the rustling of papers and the faint sound of someone clearing their throat in the back. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I sat there, back straight, hands folded neatly in my lap, while I watched the cracks spread across his carefully constructed facade. That has to be a mistake," Daniel finally managed to choke out, his voice uneven. His new girlfriend looked at him, her manicured fingers tightening around his arm. She was pale now, her lips pressed into a thin line as the realization of what had just happened settled in. "I assure you there is no mistake," Mr. Langston said calmly, flipping to the next page in the folder in front of him. "Mr. Jonathan Carter's will was very specific, and these are his final wishes. Mia Carter is the sole beneficiary of his estate, business assets, and financial holdings." Daniel's chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor as he bolted upright. His breath was ragged, uneven, his composure slipping with every second. "This doesn't make any sense," he snapped, glaring at me as if I had somehow orchestrated this. "She's not even part of the family anymore. She's nothing to him." I finally let a slow smile creep across my lips. "Apparently, your father thought otherwise." I could see the fury in his eyes, the barely contained rage simmering beneath the surface. The way his hands shook, the way his chest rose and fell as he tried to suppress the storm of emotions threatening to consume him. He turned back to the lawyer, his voice frantic now. "There has to be a clause, something that allows me to contest this," he said, his jaw tightening. "This is a mistake. My father wouldn't do this. He wouldn't leave me with nothing." Mr. Langston adjusted his glasses, expression remaining unreadable as he pulled out another document. "On the contrary, Mr. Carter, your father was very deliberate in his decision." He flipped a page, scanning the text before continuing. "In fact, he left a personal letter, which he instructed me to read aloud in the event of any disputes." Daniel's mouth snapped shut. The tension in the room thickened, the air growing heavier with each second that passed. Mr. Langston cleared his throat and began reading. Daniel, if you are hearing this, then you have finally come face to face with the consequences of your actions. I have spent my life building something from the ground up, something I had once hoped to pass on to my son. But over the years I have watched you squander every opportunity, betray those who trusted you, and, worst of all, take for granted the people who truly cared about you. When I learned what you did to Mia, when I discovered how you stole from her, abandoned her, and ran off without a shred of decency, I made my decision. A man who cannot honor his commitments, who lacks integrity and respect, does not deserve the legacy I built. Mia is the only person who ever showed me kindness without expecting anything in return. She took care of me when you were nowhere to be found. She treated this family with dignity when you were too busy indulging yourself. And that is why she is the one I trust to carry this legacy forward. As for you, you have made your choices. Now you must live with them. The letter ended, but the words lingered in the air like a heavy fog. I didn't look away from Daniel. I wanted to see every second of his reaction, every flicker of realization, every moment that the weight of his father's rejection finally sank in. His lips trembled. His jaw was clenched so tight I thought he might break his teeth. His breathing was uneven, shallow, and when he turned to look at me, his eyes burned with a mixture of hatred, disbelief, and something else, something dangerously close to desperation. You did this, he said, voice low and sharp. You turned him against me. I arched an eyebrow, barely suppressing a laugh. Are you really blaming me for the fact that your father saw you for who you truly are? His nostrils flared. This isn't over. Oh, I think it is, I said, standing slowly. I felt powerful in that moment, not because of the money, not because of the inheritance, but because for the first time in years, I was no longer the one left in ruins. He was. His new girlfriend must have realized it too, because she let go of his arm and inched away, as if suddenly aware that the man she had hitched herself to had just lost everything. The room was silent. The rest of the Carter family, all distant cousins and greedy relatives who had been hoping for a piece of the fortune, sat still, processing the dramatic turn of events. I could see some of them watching Daniel with poorly hidden satisfaction. He had never been well liked. Mr. Langston adjusted his papers. That concludes the reading. If there are no further disputes, I will proceed with the legal transfer of assets. Daniel didn't move. He stood there, his hands clenched at his sides, his breathing ragged. I stepped closer, just enough for only him to hear. I guess you should have been a better husband. His body went rigid, his fingers twitching as if he wanted to lash out, but he didn't. He couldn't. He had lost, and there was nothing he could do to change that. I turned and walked away, each step feeling lighter than the last. I was free. From him. From the pain he caused. From the life he had tried to steal from me. And as I stepped outside into the crisp evening air, feeling the weight of my past finally lift, I smiled. Because this wasn't just justice. It was revenge in its purest form. I didn't rush as I walked out of the Carter estate. I wanted to savor the moment, to let the cold evening air fill my lungs and wash away the years of heartbreak and betrayal. It was poetic, really. The man who had stolen everything from me had just lost everything himself. But I should have known Daniel wouldn't let it end so easily. I had barely made it past the estate gates when I heard hurried footsteps behind me, followed by the unmistakable sound of my name, spoken through clenched teeth. Mia! I stopped but didn't turn around immediately. Instead, I let a small smile curl at my lips before slowly pivoting to face him. He looked wrecked, his jaw tight, his chest rising and falling with uneven breaths, his hands twitching at his sides. His new girlfriend was nowhere to be seen, and I wasn't surprised. She had latched onto him expecting a rich, powerful man, but now that he was just another fraud with an empty bank account, she had probably disappeared without a word. "What do you want, Daniel?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. You, his voice cracked before he swallowed hard, his eyes burning with fury. You think this is over? You think you can just take everything and walk away? I tilted my head. That's exactly what you did to me. Funny how life works, isn't it? His nostrils flared. You don't deserve that money. I laughed then, genuinely laughed. Really? Because according to your father, I do. He made his choice, Daniel. Just like you made yours. He took a step closer, and I could see the storm brewing in his eyes. He was unraveling. For the first time in his life, he wasn't in control. He was a man drowning, grasping for anything to pull himself back to the surface. I can fight this, he spat. I can contest the will. Go ahead, I said, shrugging. Your father made sure his decision was airtight. You know how meticulous he was. You really think you'll win? His mouth opened but nothing came out. That's when I knew. It had finally sunk in. For the first time, Daniel truly understood what had happened. This wasn't just some minor setback. His father hadn't left him an out, hadn't given him a loophole. This was final. His entire world had crumbled, and there was no way to rebuild it. And I could see it in his face. He was desperate. Then, as if flipping a switch, his expression changed. The rage simmered down, his posture relaxed, and suddenly, his eyes softened in a way that made my stomach twist. Mia, he said, his voice lowering, smoother now. I sighed, already knowing what was coming. Don't, I said before he could continue. But he took another step forward. His lips curling into that familiar, charming smile he used to flash at me whenever he wanted to get his way. Come on, babe, he said softly. We don't have to do this. I mean, look at what we built together. 7 years, Mia. We were a team. We don't have to throw all of that away. I arched an eyebrow. A team, I repeated. You mean the team where you stole all our savings and ran away with another woman? His jaw tightened slightly, but he quickly covered it with a sheepish chuckle. I messed up, he admitted, running a hand through his hair. I see that now. I let greed get in the way. But Mia, we can fix this. We can start over. We can. I held up a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. Are you seriously trying to win me back because I have money now? His expression flickered just slightly, but it was enough to confirm everything I already knew. I had seen Daniel manipulate people before. I had watched him lie with ease, twist the truth to suit his narrative, charm his way out of situations that would have ruined anyone else. And now he was doing it to me. But I wasn't the same woman he had left behind. I stepped forward, just enough to make sure he could see the amusement in my eyes. You know, for a moment I thought maybe you had something real to say. Maybe, deep down, you had a sliver of regret, of remorse. But no, you're just doing what you always do. Trying to con your way into a better situation. Mia. I shook my head. It's pathetic, really. Watching you scramble. Watching you realize that for once in your life, you can't talk your way out of this. His mask cracked. The charming, apologetic act vanished in an instant, replaced once again by the raw, seething anger that had always lurked just beneath the surface. You'll regret this, he said, his voice low, sharp like a blade. Smiled. I regret ever loving you. But this, I gestured around. This is the best decision I never even had to make. I turned away and started walking again. I didn't stop this time. I didn't care what he did next. Because I knew the truth. Daniel Carter was nothing without his father's wealth, without his carefully crafted image of success. He had spent years building a life on manipulation, on power that wasn't really his, on money that he had never actually earned. And now, he was nothing. No inheritance, no fortune, no power. And that was a fate far worse than anything I could have ever done to him. As I reached my car, I took a deep breath and let myself finally exhale. For the first time in a long time, I was free. Truly, completely free. I got in, started the engine, and drove away without looking back. Because this wasn't just about revenge. This was about reclaiming my life. And I had never felt stronger. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story and tell us where you're watching from.